Okay, I'm getting ready to bake some sourdough rye bread, and it's a simple process, but it takes a little forethought with the sourdough. I generally will bake sourdough rye bread every week and a half to 2 weeks. I've been on vacation a lot though this summer, so I haven't baked in probably a month. My sourdough is fine though. It's in the fridge. I'm going to get that out and we'll get started on it. So here it is. I keep it in a mason jar. It's got a white lid on it, but that's not on there tight. It's loose so that it can breathe. In sourdough, really, there's a lot of mystery and a lot of secrets surrounding sourdough, but it's actually a very simple and easy thing. Nothing to be intimidated about. You know, a lot of people will read some complicated instructions. They'll go out, they'll mail order themselves a starter culture, which is often advertised as, you know, San Francisco sourdough culture or something along those lines, and they add that in there and they feed the thing daily and keep it at a certain temperature, and then they throw half of it away and add some more and mix it up, and it gets to be a very complicated thing. You end up with a lot of sourdough starter. None of that is really necessary. This is simply rye flour and water. And I started this probably, I don't know, a year ago, maybe something like that. I've had various starters over the years. And really all you have to do is mix some rye flour with some water, let it stand out at room temperature, feed it a couple times at the very beginning to get it started. But it'll take off on its own. The bacteria for sourdough is already right there. It's in the environment, it's in the flour. All you have to do is give that yeast that causes it to bubble and rise and gives it that sour flavor. All you have to do is give that yeast some food and water and put it at a temperature that it likes, and it'll take off for you. So if you lose your sourdough, for whatever reason, it spoils or goes bad, whatever, it's no big deal. You start another one, you can have a new starter culture in a week, 2 weeks at the tops. So it's really not a big deal. But this one here, this has been sitting in the fridge for about a month. I have not fed it or done anything to it. Looks a little ugly right now, but it'll be fine. Temperature has been sitting at in the fridge. Now it's at 42 degrees right now. So it's been in there for quite some time at that temperature. And what I'm going to do tonight is, it's the evening right now, and I plan on baking tomorrow evening, possibly, or maybe Sunday. So what I'm doing here is reviving my starter culture so that it's vibrant and alive when I go to bake. And it's relatively simple to do. All I've got to do now is let it warm up, give it a little bit of food and water, and we're good. So what I've got here, this is whole rye flour. This is stuff that I've milled myself, and I'll show you later on how I do that. So it's a little finer texture maybe than what you can find in the store, but I understand most people don't have any way to home mill rye flour. So it's perfectly fine to go out and buy yourself some stone ground rye flour from Hodgson Mills or Bob's Red Mill or something like that. It's a little bit coarser. It'll still make good bread, and you can use that. And like I said, there's no science or mystery to this, really. It's a very simple process. If you don't have rye, use wheat flour. It'll work just fine. Some people tell you don't use tap water, it's chlorinated. I've been using tap water for years with my sourdough. I have never seen a problem with it. It seems to do just fine. So I'm using a measuring cup here, but there's really no measurement to do. It's just a handy scoop. I'm not going to measure this at all. I've just got a canning funnel here just to make this a little bit easier. I'm going to put, I don't know, a couple or three. You don't want to fill this jar all the way up because hopefully the goal is that this is going to expand as it warms up. It's going to get bubbly and frothy, and we don't want it all over the counter. So we'll just put in, about that much. I don't know if you can see how much that is. You can see maybe here that the sourdough culture is up to about there. I put in about that much dry flour. Now I'm going to put in some water. How much water? Well, until it looks right. That's what I'll tell you. It doesn't really matter. You can have a thick sourdough. You can have a thin sourdough. And again, I'm just using tap water. You can have it runny. You can have it thick. The experts will tell you that a thick sourdough will have a slightly different flavor profile than a runny sourdough. Maybe that's true. I don't really notice that much of a difference, so I don't worry about it. So we'll just put some in here. And I'll just start with 3 of these little scoops, and we'll see where we're at. Now I'm going to take this funnel out of here. Now, at this point you could take a spoon and you could stir that up and so forth. I try not to dirty more utensils than I have to, so what I do is I just put the lid on here and I'll just shake it up. Just trying to get that flour incorporated with that water so it's nice and uniform. Get it mixed in a little bit with that old sourdough. And let's see what we got here. Yeah, I could leave it like this. It's I don't know if you can see that or not. It's a little thick. It's a little thicker than I like. Just simply from a convenience standpoint, I like to be able to just pour it out of the jar when it comes time to use it. I don't want to have to scrape it out of there. So I'm going to add a little more water. Again, whether it's wet or dry, it's going to work. No point in getting uptight about sourdough because it's a natural process and it's something that's going to happen unless you prevent it from happening. If you have flour and water in the same place for very long. So that's the way I look at it. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort or a whole lot of knowledge to let a natural process do what it wants to do. That's getting a little closer. Still a little bit on the lumpy side. So I'm going to add one more. There are a lot of formulas out there for sourdough. They give you feeding schedules and regimens and temperature requirements and refresh rates and all sorts of things. And you know, I don't want to ridicule that too much, because if you were running a big commercial bakery and you were after consistency and repeatability and your customers are expecting a very specific flavor profile in their bread, it's probably good to have a process that's that exact. But for a home baker, I actually like the variety. You know, the bread comes out a little different each time, but it comes out good every time. And that's what I'm after. Good bread. Good, healthy bread. I only put a few things in my bread. Flour. And usually I'll use a combination of rye and wheat. And in both cases it's whole grain. Whole rye, whole wheat. Put just a little bit of salt. Some water and some yeast, and that's it. Sourdough starter goes in, of course, but I don't consider that another ingredient because that's just flour water, and natural yeasts from the environment. So that's all I put in my breads, other than occasionally a little bit of flavoring, like a caraway seed or something like that. And it's good, healthy bread. So that's what I'm after, and bread with a little bit of tang to it, a little bit of flavor, a good bite, something that's hearty. Whole grains are great, healthy foods. They're good for your heart, good for your well, I'm no doctor, but they're good for your blood pressure and all sorts of things. So anyway, this is all we have to do with this for tonight. It's going to slowly warm up to room temperature, which in our house here in the summer, it's about 70 degrees. It'll warm up to that. In the 70 to 80 degree range, that's when your yeasts are super happy, so it's going to be a great temperature for that. Those yeasts are going to get active on that. This is going to start to bubble and expand. And by the time I come downstairs in the morning to get my morning coffee, I expect that this will be quite a bit larger in that jar. It'll have a sour smell to it, and if you taste a little bit, it'll taste a little bit effervescent, a little bit fizzy, a little bit sour. Then later on we're going to take this and then we're going to add it into a bigger bowl with even more flour and let it get even more active and start to convert some of that flour into flavor profile that we like. And then we'll end up adding that into the bread. So it's just a couple step process to revive this. Now if you had this going on your counter and you were feeding it on a regular basis and it wasn't in the fridge, you know, it would be more active right now, and I wouldn't have to do this refresh step right now. I could just put it in a bowl with some more flour and water in a larger amount and let it go to work. But this is convenient for me because by storing it in the fridge, I really don't have to feed it on a regular basis, and I like that. So we'll check back in tomorrow morning and we'll show you how we expand this, and then maybe tomorrow evening or maybe even the next day we'll get around to baking the bread and we'll show you how to do that too.